to Relatable Wisdom, the show where we find profound meaning in simple words, offering a small dose of daily reflection to help us all navigate life. Today I'm joined by Alan Katz. He's a celebrated storyteller who has written for iconic TV shows, but his truest passion, he's discovered, is in the human connection that comes from a great conversation. So let's settle in and listen to the words that have helped shape his own journey. Tell us your name and your favorite quote.
My name is Alan Katz, and the quote that really, it means a lot to me and my life. The truth will set you. Now, I got to say this as a person who believes that, I've always been grateful to Hebrew school for making me the atheist I am today. But I do believe that the truth will set you free, because I've learned this from life's examples. Now, I had a very successful career in movies and TV. I was extremely lucky. I came to Los Angeles in 1985, and I met the right people, and things just lined up perfectly for me. And I ended up writing and producing a TV show called Tales from the Crypt for HBO, which for me was a dream job. It was a great job that opened lots of doors. I made feature films and did other TV shows. And for all intents and purposes, I had achieved tremendous success. And yet, I would also argue, but did I find happiness? No. Ultimately, the success came to nothing, and I ended up in a 2 decades long spiral into a darkening depression and a writer's block I didn't even know I was experiencing. And it was all tied to the fact that I ended up keeping a secret from myself for 45 years. And this secret, what I didn't realize was that it had undermined my ability to have successful relationships with other people. It had undermined my ability to trust other people. It had undermined my ability to connect with other people. And it undermined my confidence in myself and my own abilities, really, even though I was incredibly successful. After really 20 years of this depression getting worse and worse, and the writer's block really putting me at a tremendous distance from my own creativity, 3 days before Christmas 2016, I came within literal inches of killing myself.
Oh.
And I knew I had a problem, and I knew I needed medication, and that scared the hell out of me. I'd done a lot of research myself. My father was a physician, and so I'd grown up in the medical culture. I knew that my GP, my general physician, had no background in my particular problem, the mental illness that was bedeviling me. And so I didn't want to walk in. I didn't want to say to him, hey, I'm depressed. Can you help me? Whatever they had on hand in terms of that medication, the last pharmaceutical rep who walked through their office probably said, hey, you got any depressed patients? Try this out on them, see if it helps. Well, I didn't want to experiment that way. I wanted to if I was going to take a shot with medication, I wanted to at least have some relationship between the medication and my particular problem. So I'd done my research, and I went to my GP. I said, look, here's what I almost did. Here's what I want to do. And he got out his smartphone, and he looked up the medication. He said, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And he prescribed it. I picked it up. I told my family what I was going to do, and then I got super lucky. And within 36 hours, I leveled. And I felt the medication doesn't make the darkness go away, but it puts the darkness in a box where it cannot get at you. Yeah, it can reach out between the bars, but it can't get you. And so once I felt that the darkness could no longer get me, I could confront the secret that had been haunting me. And it was the fact that when I was 14, I was sexually molested twice by the religious director at the synagogue where my family belonged. And the first time is bad. The problem for me was the second time, because the second time happened because I didn't say anything after the first time. And as the second time is happening, you realize, oh my God, this is what I said to myself was, this is your fault. You made this happen to you. And so every terrible thing that happens to you after that, you ultimately blame on yourself. Well, sometimes as an adult, yeah, it might be your fault, but what you're doing is a much deeper accusation of something you're not guilty of. When I was finally able to confront this and give really some attention to the 14-year-old me that had not gotten the attention that he needed. Suddenly, the truth set me free. Now, I had been a very successful writer, but the strange thing was, if you can't tell your own story to yourself, can you really tell anyone else's story? And being able to tell me my own story, the truth, was liberating. And once I could tell my story, not just to me, but to the whole world, because it was important to tell the rest of the world, keeping it a secret had done me no good.
Good.
Once I could tell my story to other people, I could tell other people's stories. And again, the key to it is the honesty. The truth will set you free.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join, or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Half-truths or quasi-truths, the absolute truth. And I suddenly, I went from being a writer, once I could really truthfully tell stories, I became a storyteller. And that really is all the difference in my life today. I saw what I did for a living very differently. And whereas previously I didn't think very much of what I did for a living, I suddenly realized, dude, you're a storyteller. It's one of the highest callings there is. Storytellers, our job is to have our finger on the pulse of the cultures in which we live. And to tell the culture, we're like a canary in a coal mine. If the culture's doing okay, we can tell them that. But if the culture's not healthy, it's our job to tell the culture via our stories and storytelling, here's what's wrong with this. Maybe here's a way to fix it. We are essential to our culture's well-being. Do your job, dude. And so I suddenly reconnected with my own life with so much more purpose than I ever had before. And because suddenly I could relate to people as I could never before, because this burden, this terrible secret was no longer tormenting me. Suddenly, I began to have relationships with all kinds of people all over the world, wonderful relationships based on storytelling. Now that I could tell people's stories, suddenly all these stories came toward me. And my little company, Costard and Touchstone Productions, I ended up, there was a fan group just after the pandemic, during the pandemic, a fan group of Tales from the Crypt fan group called Dads from the Crypt had formed. These were a bunch of dads in various parts of America. They reviewed episodes of Tales from the Crypt and gave parenting advice. And one of the dads, Jason Stein, reached out to me, and I thought that was such a funny concept. He said, "Hey, we're going to be reviewing one of your episodes. You want to sit in with us?" And I said, "Yeah, great." And so we had a terrific time, and a few weeks later, Jason reached out again. He said, "Hey, we're going to be reviewing Bordello with Blood, the second Tales from the Crypt feature film. Yeah. You want to sit in with us again?" I said, "Jason, because truly the story of the making of the second Tales from the Crypt feature film, that was really when the wheels came off the wagon in my creative life. It was the most terrible creative experience I've ever had. It was truly how not to make a movie." And that's what I said to Jason. The story of the making of Bordello Blood is not a half-hour conversation with you. It's a podcast unto itself. And that was the motivation for starting my first podcast, How Not to Make a Movie podcast. 4 years of doing that, and that introduced me to the world of podcasting. And podcasting, I discovered, was a wonderful environment for storytelling. And while I was doing that podcast, a friend from my childhood reached out to me with a story of a true story of something that had happened to him. And he wanted to do it as a movie or TV show. And the process of taking an idea from, let's say, my head, not just a true story, but my head to turn it into a movie or a TV show, this is years, a years-long endeavor just to write the script and get it right. Years if you're lucky. Then, okay, let's say you got the script right. All right, I'm going to turn it into a TV show. I got to write the Bible. What's called a Bible. It's, all right, well, I wrote episode 1. What happens episode 2 and the rest of season 1? What happens in seasons 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever? Well, who are all the characters? Tell us about the environment. What are the story arcs? You have to put all of that into this document. That's 50 or 60 pages of intense hard work. Doesn't happen overnight. It takes... add another year, probably. Then once you've got all this assembled, assuming the marketplace is still the same, then you have to convince executives, people sitting in executive suites, to read your material. And just to induce them to read, you have to create what's called a pitch deck. And then the pitch deck is like a comic book version of the whole thing, just to get them to read. And if they say, okay, we'll read, that's just to get to the top of the meat grinder. Never mind what's going to happen at the other end of the meat grinder, the sausage that's going to come out after it's gone through all the various processes of production. There are thousands and thousands of, there's no other thing to call them, but assholes standing in your way. And at any one time, any one of them can kill your project dead just because they're an asshole. I said to my friend, you don't want to do this as a movie or TV show, especially considering what the story was. It's such a complicated, difficult piece of material. I said, let's do it as a podcast instead. And he said, okay. My friends, let's call him Hal. He worked his way through medical school in the mid-1980s as an anonymous sperm donor. Jump forward 27 years. He was a successful radiologist. And he joined 23andMe, curious about his health genes. It never occurred to him the ramifications of adding his DNA to a growing DNA database. He lost his donor anonymity, and suddenly 7 total strangers found Daddy. Except 6 of them had no idea their actual biological father was Hal, a sperm donor. And Hal had been married for 20 years to a woman with a son from a previous marriage who he had raised as his own son. Never raised any biological children of his own, but suddenly now he had 7 biological children. Well, these were people in their 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds. He was not going to father them. They had people who fathered them.
Yeah.
But he felt fatherly toward them. And he had money, and he was willing to, he wanted to have as much of a fatherly relationship as they were willing to have, and he was willing to cut them in on the money that he had, which was considerable. So he was quite open to having as much of a relationship as they wanted to have. But the 7th, one of the daughters brought a thing called genetic sexual attraction to the table, and that just destroyed everything that Hal wanted to create. So we created a 7-episode story podcast, absolutely true story, called The Donor, a DNA Horror Story. And it's Hal's story of he had hoped to have this positive family-like relationship, but there's a monster. There's a monster in the mix, and that destroyed everything. And it really is a DNA horror story. And so the first story podcast I did, where I got to tell an absolute truth, was after telling my story, was Hal's. And in telling Hal's story, that opened the door to all the people in the donor conceived community. And one of them was this woman named Donna Hall, who, when she told me her story, I said, Donna, you're a podcast unto yourself. And that became the Hall Closet. And so one podcast telling one person's story led to another story. And right now I've got 4 podcasts out in the world and 8 more in production. They'll be coming out at various times over the course of the rest of the year. These are all story podcasts produced. There's 6, 7, 8, 9, sometimes 10 episodes. But the truth having set me free, it turned me into a storyteller. And turning into a storyteller opened my world like it had never been opened before.
I feel like when before you said these truths, right? You are afraid to speak, to talk, to express yourself because you are afraid of spilling the truth. And so the moment you eventually, reveal the truth, speaking wasn't a problem. You weren't like, oh, I shouldn't talk, I shouldn't say, I shouldn't express myself. I'm going to say what I'm not supposed to say. Now it was like, I don't have anything to hide. All my my cupboard and everything is clear. I don't have any dirty laundry. Let me express myself now.
Exactly so. It's funny how our inner minds work. And it's like our inner minds know these truths that our outer minds don't necessarily know. And when we can get our inner mind and our outer mind aligned and on the same page, oh, holy cow. It's amazing. It is quite amazing what it can do to your life. I walk around, most days in a perpetual state of bliss. Now, look, it's the mood stabilizer just keeps the darkness in a box. It's not a happy. I have a very good therapist who helps give me perspective, and that's vital. And yeah, I live in California, so I consume copious amounts of smoked THC. But that has a very calming effect on me. And I use I use cannabis for work. Strains like sativas like Durban Poison, I find, give my mind tremendous focus. And so many stuff has happened. So many things are happening inside my head. I'm what's called hypomanic. And inside of my head is like a black box theater, which is like if you take a shoe box, paint it black inside, turn it over, and now you can put anything you want inside it. Lights and laser lights and projections and theater and oh gosh, and music and all kinds of things happening. It's all fascinating. THC kind of drops a scrim over most of it, so I can focus on 2 or 3 things and get things done. And yeah, but then there's a lovely calming effect to the whole thing. Yeah, all those things together. Yeah, they help me function, but that's not what makes me happy. What keeps me in a perpetual state of bliss is I'm living a purposeful life because the truth set me free.
Yeah, I'm quite concerned. Like, for 45 years, you bottled this stuff up. And of course, I know that it wasn't easy, but like, why did it take that long? 45 years is a long time.
I had to hit a breaking point. It's funny. A few weeks before everything began happening, my wife and my daughter and I went to a movie together. My daughter is in her early 20s, and the movie was about a sexual assault. And we watched it, and we talked about it afterwards, and not for 2 seconds did I say or even think. Now, in my personal experience, I did not. And after I had my revelation, and one of the things that struck me was that I had that conversation so close to really that moment of revelation. The truth was there, but I was not free yet to benefit from knowing it.
Yeah. I'm glad that eventually, because for me,
well, that makes 2 of us, Wisdom. Really and truly.
because I'm like, what if you didn't live up to that 45 years? So actually, you'd have died with that body in your chest.
Oh, if I had, the first time that I tried to hurt myself in that way, it simply meant I was there. That I was quite capable of a moment of sheer irrationality of just doing something stupid and with fatal consequences. And that's why I knew that's why I drove immediately to my physician. I said, okay, I now know I'm at this place where I can do this stupid thing without even thinking about it. So I need the time to act is now, or I may not be around later to do this. I simply knew that I had crossed a line inside my own head.
Yeah.
It was time to get, if I was going to get help, time was now.
Yeah. Now or never.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. But hey, I'm here to tell the story.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, the first time that you told the story, I could only hear your voice, but now I'm seeing your face, so it has added this richness and depth to the story layer.
I hope it makes a difference. It's, well, even better if we could be sitting in the same room in the same room
Wow.
sharing the story, because so much of our communication, of the storytelling that we do, is unverbal. It's physical. Our body language is so essential to just how we the dance that we would do between the two of us if we were sitting across a table or just sitting in two chairs next to each other. The language that our bodies would speak to each other. And plus, just to be able to make actual eye contact rather than looking down the barrel of my lens and occasionally glancing over so I can see your eyes, so that I'm trying to approximate, really, with the modern technology, the experience of having a human conversation with another human being. We're doing everything we possibly can to overcome the technology and still have these human interactions with each other.
Alan, I want us to do something. I want us to end with a bang, because I want you to to say something from everything we've talked about, the truth will set you free. I know that's right. End it with a bang. What will be the last? Okay, do I need to ask a question, or do you understand what I'm saying?
You want another philosophical hot point to go out on?
Yeah. Then we round up and boom, that's the episode, so that people will start thinking.
Not only will the truth set you free, it will empower you. And it's the empowerment that you can do things with. And telling your story, being heard, is the first step to empowerment. Disempowerment means no one hears you, or they don't care to hear you. Well, all right, first be heard. If they won't listen, well, if you're creative, then you've got to find a creative way to do it. But if there are politics, then you need to use politics to make your voice heard. Make your voice heard. Do not accept no as an answer. Whatever it takes to make your voice heard. South of violence, Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alan. If people want to learn more about you, your podcast, your books, and things
the perfect place to find everything that I'm doing is at https://costardandtouchstone.com. That's it. And that's my little company, Costard and Touchstone Productions. And so if you just come to costardandtouchstone.com, literally we will connect you. We'll tell you what we're doing, and we'll connect you to all our podcasts, the ones that we're doing now, and previews of the ones that are coming in the very, very near future. And some really exciting podcasts are coming. I can hardly wait.
Yeah. Once again, thank you so much for sharing with us your favorite quotes and your story.
It is always a pleasure to spend time with you, Wisdom, really and truly.
You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who loved the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatable.wisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.